Hey everybody, Andre here, and today we're going to analyze Mozart's Ave Verum Corpus. This is a motet that Mozart wrote towards the end of his life, maybe 6 months before he died, I think. And we remember Mozart as a composer of opera and chamber music and symphonies and string quartets and stuff like that, but we forget that he has quite a lot of sacred music as well. This is probably the most famous of his smaller sacred pieces, but I thought it would be fun today to analyze this piece together. It's going to be more of a conducting focused analysis. So I'm going to basically pretend like I'm getting ready to analyze this piece to conduct it. And so that's the first thing that I'll tell you. The second thing is that it's not really a beginner-friendly video. I mean, you can, of course, follow along, but if you have some intermediate skills, some basic skills here, I think it will be very, very useful for you. But if you are a beginner, I'd recommend you start somewhere else and get the fundamentals under your belt first before trying to tackle something like this. And lastly, this is going to be a long video, so grab a drink, do whatever you need to do, grab your score, follow along. But yeah, we're going to just roll and do this thing in real time. I've never analyzed this myself. I've performed it a lot, but I've never actually sat down and analyzed it. So it'll be kind of a nice experience. I'll show you what to do as we go through this. So yeah, thanks so much for watching. Please like the video if you do like it. Subscribe to the channel for more stuff. And without further ado, let's do this thing. So we have this score, and I also have a blank piece of paper just in case for some extra notes. Things you need for sure. You need some pencils. I have a pen here as well. I have my Einstein ruler. Very important. But a straight edge, I think, is crucial for analysis, because otherwise it just becomes a messy disaster. So the first step is always either listen to the piece or play it at the piano or something like that, just to make sure that you have it in your ear, because I really believe that music analysis is meaningless unless you have actually heard the piece in some capacity, unless you're the composer writing the piece from the beginning. The next step is to work, big picture in towards the little stuff. So what I mean by big picture is I want to tackle the large form first, the large form of this piece. And this piece is basically in binary form. So we start in measure 1, we have a little bit of a string introduction with the timbalo, and then the choir starts. So we're going to go through and find the two large sections of this piece. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're basically just scanning through. We see there's just a lot of music happening, and we're waiting to see until there's some change. And you notice that in measure 18, we have our chord here. We have a chord for the choir, and then we have blank space for the singers, but the strings keep going. The strings and the piano instrument keep going. So I'm going to mark this spot really quickly. I'm not going to necessarily mark all the way down, but I'm just going to remind myself that this is a spot. And we're going to decide where the B section is in a little bit. So, all right, so here's a moment to remember, and then we're going to keep going. We have some extra chromaticism going on. That's cool. We have some more chromaticism. We have another little blank space here. If you notice, there's a bit of a rest here. So I'm just going to make a note to check on that. Keep going. And then at the very end, we have kind of a similar situation where we have some extra bars. Okay, so now that we've gone through and noted where all of the changes in texture happen, let's see where the first, what happens here in the first big change in texture. So we're in the key of D major, so 2 sharps, right? We start in D major. Where do we cadence here? We have this chord in measure 18 is an A, C sharp, E, A chord, A major. So that's either 5 in the key of D as a half cadence, or it's 1 in a new key. Maybe there has been a modulation. And if I look around, what are the stuff that you see here? Well, you see a D sharp, you see a G sharp. So the D sharp is sort of tonicizing E, and the G sharp is tonicizing A. So that means that there's kind of like a 5-5, 5-1 situation going on in here. So probably that's telling me that we're tonicizing or modulating to A. Let's work backwards a little bit. Let's see if we can confirm that. So yeah, working backwards away from that cadence, you see that we have G sharps happening as early as measure 9, 10, 11, 12. So that's probably, look how much time happens. You know, there's so much time with the G sharp. So we're probably tonicizing A here. So if we're going to A, that means that this cadence here, let's see, we have 5-1 in the lowers, 5-1 in the lowest voices, and in the top voice, G sharp to A, that's T-do, G sharp to A, that's T-do. So this is a perfect authentic cadence. Perfect authentic cadence, PAC. And it happens right on the downbeat of measure 18. So with our other paper, I'm just going to draw a line here. We have the start of our A section at measure 0. Actually, is it measure 0? There's no pickup. Starts right on measure 1. Yeah, starts right on measure 1. So multiple measures, MM1 through, and let's see, 18. Now, one of the questions that I have is, do these 3 bars of string stuff, do they belong to the previous section or do they belong to the new section? So, well, let's think about this for a second. So, there's no hard stop in the strings, right? It's a continuation of the previous music because there's a bit of a holdover. And in the continuo part, same thing, kind of keeps going into the next part. So I'm inclined to believe that these 3 bars are sort of a cadential extension in the key of A major. And if we look in measure 18, 19, 20, 21, we have another PAC here as well. So that sort of leads me to think that the A section doesn't end after measure 18, but it actually ends after measure 18, 19, 20, 21. It ends at the very end of measure 21. And another clue why that I think is the truth is because if you look between the measures here, we have when we cadenced in A, the next chord is this F sharp minor 7 chord, which is 6, 7 in the key of A. But here we start on A major, and then in the next bar we also have A major. So we have 2 A major chords in a row. So that probably means that there's some kind of division. So I will confidently say that we're going to demarcate this spot as the B section or A prime. We're not actually sure whether it's A prime or B. A prime would be the choice if this section was very similar to the stuff that happened before, and B would be the better choice if the music is quite different. So I'm just going to look at the first page. I mean, I already kind of know the answer, but if you look at the opening music, Ave Verum Corpus. Okay, fine. Here we don't start with a string intro. We go cuius latus perforatus. So it's a little different. I'm sorry, I don't have perfect pitch, so those are probably the wrong notes. But yeah, so very different. So I'd say confidently that this is the B section. B section. Okay, cool. So on our little extra paper, we'll say that A goes from measure 1 all the way through measure 18, 19, 20, 21. If we want to be more specific, we could say it starts on, we're in 4/4. I guess we're in 2/2 because it's cut time. But we start on measure 1, point 1, because beat 1, right? And it goes all the way through measure 21. And, well, let's write it as if it's in 4/4, but it is in 2/2. It's an alla breve. It's 21.4, the 4th quarter note, right? All the way through that, through the measure. So this is the A section. And there is a PAC here, if we want to remember. And then the B section starts in measure 22. And let's see how long it lasts. Does it go back to something else? So that's all fine. Do 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 do. That's not the A section, right? This might be a continuation. So the B section looks like it's divided into two separate little entities. And we never get the opening again. So yeah, it just keeps going. So whatever measure this is. So 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46. Measure 46 point, let's say 4, because it does go all the way through the end of the measure. So what does that tell us? So we have basically 21 measures long. And this one is 24 measures long. So pretty close, but not exactly symmetrical. So the B section is slightly longer. And knowing that is actually important, because if you're memorizing, if you're memorizing a piece of music, if you're counting in your head, you want to make sure that you haven't counted wrong. Okay, cool. And where do we end? So we end here back in D major, and we have a 5-1, Re Do. This is a PAC. So we end here on a PAC. Cool. And we start the piece in D major as well. So we'll say on our little extra paper, we'll say D major. And somewhere along the lines, we do go to A. Here, we start in A. We probably go somewhere else. We haven't talked about that yet, but we do end up in D major. So here's a little outline. Now let's talk about the internal phrases. So this is the big picture, big structure. It's in binary form. Terrific. All right. Let's get the small phrases done. So, this is like a 2-bar opening phrase. I'll mark that. I'm not going to draw the line as bold as before, but we basically have a little phrase marking there. You can use color as well if you want to use one color for like a big phrases or big sections, and like another color for small phrases. So we have an opening bar measured 1 to 2. Have another line here. So phrase 1, we have measure 1, measure 2, or multiple measures 1 and 2. Cool. And we'll figure out the labels for this stuff later. Now we have the first choral phrase. Ave Verum Corpus. That's sort of an idea. Natum de Maria Virgine. That seems like a cadence right there. So 2 potential spots for a cadence. Right? We have this on the pus of corpus and on the ne of Virgine. So let's figure out this one here. So in measure 3, 4, 5, 6. 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. Measure 6.3. Because the cadence happens on the 3rd beat. Corpus. Actually, the cadence, it sort of happens on the downbeat, doesn't it? Except there's just there's some suspensions happening. Right? There's a suspension right here. Suspension right here. What kind of suspension is this? This is 4-3. And this is a 9-8. And actually, if you look at the continuo part, that's a beautiful thing about having a continuo part. It actually tells you. So we have some suspensions happening. So that's kind of fun. And if you're a conductor, you probably lean into those suspensions. But the cadence is on the downbeat, isn't it? So what kind of cadence is it? Well, T, Do in the bass immediately tells us that this is an imperfect authentic cadence. So the first little phrase here after that, measure 3 to measure 6, and we'll say cadence on the downbeat. So measure 3 to measure 6, IAC. I really should put it on top. We're doing this in real time, folks. IAC. Cool. And then measure 7 through measure 10. And in measure 10, again, on the downbeat, we have this A major chord. Okay, so A major, half cadence, right? Right on the downbeat. So back to our little paper. We have measure 7 through measure 10, and we have a half cadence here. So far, this is an inconclusive. We have two sort of. We have a more conclusive cadence and we have a less conclusive cadence. So far, we're not quite sure. We haven't ended anything yet. So let's keep going. Starting from measure 11. That's over here on the verum. Vere passum. We start on an A major chord. Vere passum immolatum in cru. So this is an interesting spot because we have built up this idea that there's 4-bar phrases happening, but what do we get here? We get an F sharp chord, and what's interesting is that we expect. Oh, I forgot to draw a line. Oops. I forgot to draw a line. All right, we expect 4-bar phrases. You know, we had a thing here. We had a 4-bar phrase here. 4-bar phrase here. But what do we expect here? We expect another cadence, and in fact, we expect another cadence on the downbeat because that's the trend. So what happens here is it doesn't do that. So we have this kind of a subversion of expectation, which is really exciting. So that's kind of fun. What do we end up with here? So we have this E sharp. That's not in the key of D. E sharp, G sharp, B. Is there any other note here? There's a D. So it's E sharp fully diminished 7 chord. So that's 7 diminished of whatever F sharp is. So F sharp in the key of D is 3. But we know from what we did before, we know that we're modulating to A. So what's F sharp in the key of A? It's 6. So over here, we do have a 4-bar phrase, but we don't have a cadence in the spot that we remember. This is a deceptive cadence in the key of A. So I'm going to write down the chord. So 7 diminished, 7 of 3, but it's also a 7 diminished 7 of 6 in the key of A. And this is a 6 chord. This is an F sharp chord. So this is a deceptive cadence, classic deceptive cadence. And this phrase is sort of elided because elided meaning connected. The soprano part, and the violin part, and the cembalo part, I never know how to say that. It keeps going. So there's a bit of a connection between these two, and the continuo part, of course. There's a connection between these two phrases. So that's really interesting. So I'm going to make note of that. Measure 11, 12, 13, 14. And this time I am going to say 14.3 is where the deceptive cadence happens. And then in measure 15, and I'm going to make a little mark here that says that there's a connection. In measure 15, we have probably 4 more bars. We start on this D major chord in first inversion, but quickly we go to an A chord and a B chord, and then a 5 chord, 1 6 4 5 1. So cadential 6/4 right here. 1 6 4 5 7. I think is there a D in here? There's a D. Yeah, 5 7 and then 1 in the key of A. So what we end up with is we have measure 15 through measure 18, and there's a PAC in the key of A. There's a modulation that happens from D to A right here. So let's look at our little phrase graph instead of looking at the score. So we have a little kind of introductory thing. Let's call it intro, and we'll put an intro with a question mark for now. So we have a little introductory thing. Then we have a 4-bar phrase, 4-bar phrase, 4-bar phrase, 4-bar phrase. So I made a bit of a mistake. So I erased some things because I made a little bit of a mistake. But so basically we have these 4-bar phrases, and let's think about how we can structure them together. So if you think of these two as a unit and these two as a unit, we have two 8-bar phrases with two 4-bar, or excuse me, four 4-bar subphrases. And this makes a lot of sense because if you look at the music, how are you going to sing this? Ave, Ave Verum Corpus, natum de Maria Virgine. Or are you going to carry? So it kind of depends. Is there momentum going through these two phrases, these two subphrases, or is there not? I'm in the camp of thinking that yes, this music connects to the next music, so it flows forward. However, if you hear this as a hard stop, then maybe you hear it as 4 different phrases rather than 2. So it's kind of interesting. It really depends on your ear. It really depends on your interpretation. And you know what's awesome? If you're the conductor, you're the boss. So you make the decision. But I believe that it is 2 8-bar phrases rather than 4 4-bar phrases. If it is 4 4-bar phrases, the terminology is a little bit more complicated because then you get a phrase group here and then a period here. But I think that we can say it's a period with 2 8-bar phrases. I can't write 8-bar phrases from measure 3 to measure 10, and then from measure 11 to measure 18. And what a period is, basically you have two phrases. One ends with a less conclusive cadence, and one ends with a more conclusive cadence. So half cadence is less conclusive than PAC. Of course, if you don't hear the modulation happen, then the whole thing is a phrase group. But you know, I'm the boss. But there are of course there's different ways to hear this. So please don't let me pigeonhole you into one way of thinking. This is how I'm doing it. In any case, we still have a few more bars left before the B section, don't we? Let me find the next paper. It's so easy to get lost here. Yeah, so we have another little moment here. And we're still in A. This is a F sharp 7 chord, 6 7, and then 1 6 4 5 1. So basically it's just a cadential extension. And I'm going to actually write that. Cadential extension, if I can spell correctly. 1 6 4 5 7 1 6 7, and passing 6 4. This is I don't know, it's not really that important. 1 6 4, passing 6 4, and this is a D sharp, A, F sharp, B. This is a B 5 6 5 of 5. Okay, not that important, but let's just do it. So basically we have an extra little 3-bar phrase, or it's an extra little 4-bar phrase where this string stuff here elides. And how I like to mark that is I'll put a little line here, and I'll actually do a little thing that shows us that there's an elision. Trying to cross things out. So this is an elided cadence. So we have 4-bar phrases. So that's kind of fun how we have measure 18 through measure 21. And here we have an elision. So we tackled our A section. Now let's do our B section. Our B section starts in A major, but very quickly you start to get a lot of B flats. You get C naturals, you get F naturals. So we're going to distant lands here. We're going to F major. And how do we get there? Well, first of all, let's sort out that there is a cadence that happens on the second quarter note of measure 22, 23, 24, 25. So that's a IAC, imperfect authentic cadence, in the key of F. How do we get here? Well, this is our last A major chord. On the second quarter note here we have G, G, C, E, B flat, there's a C sharp still. It's not a C natural. So C sharp, yeah, C sharp. So C sharp, E natural, E. So it's a C sharp fully diminished 7 chord. And C sharp is the leading tone to D. So it's sort of like a 7 of 4 in the key of A. All right. Let's write that down. 7 fully diminished 4/3 of 4. On the next beat we have G, G. It's the same thing. On the next measure, in as early as actually the tenor part, we have a C natural, and the viola part we have C natural. Okay, so that's kind of interesting. The C sharp 7 chord, C sharp fully diminished 7 chord, sort of slides down to become a C7 chord, which is a 5/7 of F. And what's F in the key of A? 5/7 of flat 6. Oh, that's cool. So there's some mode mixture happening here. So yeah, what does this have to do with anything? Well, basically, this chord in the key of F is the 7 diminished 4/3 of 6, and then this is just straight up 5/7. So that's kind of fun. We have a little bit of a chain of secondary stuff going on, but we do get to a 5/1 in the key of F major. So that's cool. We have a sort of a different thing, but a 4-bar phrase. So let's go back here. We had our A section, we had our B section. So measure 22 through measure 2, 3, 4, 5, measure 25. We had an IAC here, and I'll say 22.2, so to tell us that it's on the second beat. All right, so we have an IAC. Then, starting from measure 26. Oh, lots of chromaticism here. Holy moly. So we have F, B natural, D, G. So it's a G7 chord, G4/2. So that's in the key of F. That's the 5/4/2 of 5. But we don't stay in F very long, do we? Instead of going to 5 chord, so this is 5/4/2 of 5 in the key of F. This goes to a C sharp, G, 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 E, C sharp, E, C sharp, C sharp diminished chord. And then we do fill this out a little bit. We get a B flat in there, C sharp. So yeah, this chord is sort of that 7 of 6 again. This time it's a triad, 7/6 of 6. And on the third beat here, we have an A major chord. So that's kind of cool. So what's A major in the key of F? Whew, that's a chromatic mediant, right? It's not quite in the key. So that means we are probably going back. All right. So what is this 5/4/2 of 5 in the key of A? So 5/4/2 of 5. C is flat 3. So this is 5/4/2 of flat 3 in A. And this chord is just straight up 7 diminished 6 of D, which is 4. And then we get to our 1/6 chord in A. So it's really maybe it wasn't even a modulation, but it's probably easier to call it an imperfect authentic cadence. I suppose you can also call this a deceptive cadence because it does trick you, right? We think it's setting us up for F major, but then we really quickly go back to A. So maybe this is a deceptive cadence. I'm going to put it in parentheses, and maybe that affects how you do this. Anyway, deceptive cadence or imperfect authentic, but then we do go to A, and a 4-bar phrase sort of ends here. And what cadence do we have on the ne of sanguine? We have G sharp to A, G sharp, D, F natural. So this is a G sharp fully diminished 7 chord. 7 to 1. 7 fully diminished, 7 to 1. So this is an imperfect authentic cadence. Okay, we can remove our little mark from before. Okay, cool. So, and it looks like this is another one of those elided cadences, elided phrases, right? Just like at the very end of our A section, we had an elided phrase. Here also, the strings keep going. Yeah, the voices stop, but the strings and the cembalo keep going. So I'll make another one of those markings. And this time, I'll mark the whole measure. So we have kind of like a little bit of an elided situation going on. But anyway, we have another 4-bar phrase. I forgot to mark it on the previous page. Cool. All right. So we have a 4-bar phrase, sort of go to F a little bit, and then quickly 4-bar phrase, go out and back to A. Let's find our little extra sheet. Make sure we don't forget all of this. So we're in the key of F briefly, and then measure 26 to measure 7, 8, 9, measure 29. We go back to A, and we had, what kind of cadence was it? IAC. Another IAC. So, all right. Next. All right, so starting from measure 7, 8, 9, 30, measure 30, we have a new little phrase situation. And let's go a 4-bar phrase. Okay, Esto nobis pregustatum in mo. First time that we actually don't really truly have a 4-bar situation. It really keeps going. So this is very clear to me. And if you look at, I mean, this is a little bit more detail right now than what we need, but if you look at the soprano, alto, tenor, bass, there's a little bit of a canonical thing happening, a call and response, and a similar thing in the 2 violins and the viola and the continuo. So yeah, there's a bit of a continuation. So I'm going to put an arrow here because we expect a 4-bar phrase, but we don't get one. So let's see what we do get. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And here we have a clear cadence. Totally clear cadence. I'll mark the bar line. What cadence do we have here? So this chord is a G major chord, right? G, D, that's a D, G, D, G, B natural, B, yeah, G major. So what is G major in the key of A? Well, that's a 4 chord. So we end on a 4 chord. Fascinating. This is a half plagal. All right, HP, half plagal cadence, or HPC, or whatever. Very unusual. Half plagal cadence. And we get there through a D major, 5 chord. Wait, sorry, this is a 4 chord in the key of D. I apologize. Yeah, 1, 6, 4, 5 to 4. So 1, 6, 4, 5 to 4. So whoever says in 4, 6. Sorry. So yeah. So interesting. 1, 6, 4, 5 to 4, 6. Very unusual. After a cadential 6, 4, everybody says, oh, it either has to go to a 1 chord or a 6 chord. But here, proof that it's not always the case. It goes to a half plagal cadence. Fascinating. So when did we go back to D? I suppose as early as this area, we have a D major chord right here. So maybe this whole measure, this 5 chord, this A chord was actually a 5 chord. So maybe that's what's happening. So we have a 5 chord back to D situation, and here we have 1. So yeah, we're back in D major. That's kind of cool. So in D major, we have an 8-bar phrase. D major. From measure 30 all the way to measure 38, I think, through measure 37. Through measure 37. And then there's an interesting thing that happens here. if you see the violin and the soprano voice and the continuo part, we have G to D. We have a fa do, right? We have kind of like a plagal motion here. And that reminds me of something that happened earlier. Where was it? Yeah, so we're going to come back to this, but that reminds me of something that happened in the soprano and the violin and the cembalo. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So I'm going to make a star here. And I'm going to make a star. Where was it? I'm going to make a star here. So those two spots are related, right? They do a very similar sort of thing. And this is another sort of elided place. Because the music really, it's not hard to stop. It keeps going with this pickup into the next thing. So in more. And yeah, this is interesting because you can, it depends on how you would perceive this, right? Does the next phrase start on the downbeat? In more, in more. It really starts like kind of in the middle of this measure. So I'm going to amend my previous phrasing. I'm going to say 37 point goes through the second beat, and then the next thing starts on measure 37.3. So in the middle of the measure is where the next phrase starts. So I'm going to remove this line. And I'm actually going to draw the line like right before this note. So right on the third beat. Fascinating, fascinating. So, okay. So we're in D major. Cool. In more examines. Another cadence right there. And this is a PAC for sure. Right? We have so do, re do. And then we have a little bit of an extra string thing. So what is this? We have from 37.3, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43. So from 37.3 to measure 43, we have another long phrase. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bars. Actually, 6 bars, really. 6.5 bar phrase. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.5 bars. So that's fascinating. 6.5 measures. This one was, previous one was how many measures? Let's find it. Previous one was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.5 measures. And then the other two were 4 bar phrases. Yeah, so 4 measures and 4 measures. Wow, so how interesting. How interesting. And we're not done yet, though. We're not done because we have 3 more measures here. 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 43, 44, 45, 46. And again, it's another one of those elided situations because the strings aren't done, right? The strings aren't done. The strings keep going. So the strings from measure, what did I say before? 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43. From measure 43. Oops. From measure 43 to the end, which is 43, 44, 45, 46. And then we have a PAC. So here we had a PAC. Here we had a PAC. Here we had a half plagal cadence. Okay. Wow. So we have done our formal structural analysis of this piece. And what are some conclusions that we can draw here? Wow. So we have an A section and we have a B section. The B section is longer. The A section is much more regular, isn't it? Way more regular. We have a clearly defined period here. This is not so well defined. We have some tonal motion here. We have a sort of a conclusive cadence, less conclusive cadence, conclusive cadence. So this is more of like a phrase group. than this. So very different characters. So if you're conducting this or performing this, there's a very clear musical difference between the A section and the B section. So that's an interesting conclusion to be drawn here. We have little strings here, strings here, strings here. So what that tells us is that it's kind of a bookended situation. We have a very short starting string bookend, and then we have kind of a longer string bookend at the end. And right in the middle, we have another string thing. So we're kind of flanked by strings, and then we have a core of the sound. So really interesting. You can then use this this structure to then help you memorize or figure out the phrasing or whatever. But now let's think a little bit about the details. And the first thing that I want to know about is those stars. So I'm going to write star equals measure 37.3 and measure 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.4. 14.4. So just by looking at these two numbers, you'll notice that it's almost, it's not really the same at all. This happens a lot sooner in the A section than this happens in the B section. So it's not quite happening in the same spot, and it's not happening on the same beat, but it is the same sort of idea. It's that ascending leap. The first ascending leap is a perfect fourth, but here it's a perfect fifth. So there's a little bit of an expansion there, but that motive is similar. So I would definitely make note of it. Let's see if we can scan some other interesting spots. Oh, my music is all out of order. So we have our opening strings, which kind of leads into da dum ba dum da dum ba dum dum, and then we kind of our choral opening it just flows right out of it. It's very smooth, and probably you wouldn't be marking time if you're conducting this, right? It would kind of flow into the downbeat, so it flows out of this. So that's I would mark, flow through. Okay. Ave, Ave Verum Corpus. There's absolutely no breath here, right? Absolutely no breath. So I would mark that. And I'm noticing as we go through this, there's really not that much motivic similarity. So we did perfect fourth up, a sixth down, third. That's the melody. Everything else is sort of stepwise. So we haven't had too much motivic, like, interplay as far as I've seen, but maybe we can see. So again, we have that stress, and I would stress that somehow. Maybe a tenuto, corpus. Go for everybody. Now, the real question here is, do you take a breath? Ave, Ave Verum Corpus natum de Mari, or Corpus na. I believe that now that we've seen our structure, it makes a lot of sense that these two subphrases are connected. So it makes way more sense to me personally to not take that S. And I've seen a lot of different, I've performed this so many times, and I've done this so many different ways that, sometimes they mark an S right here. Corpus na. And one of the reasons there is for clarity, right? For clarity, we don't want the sibilants, we don't want rogue S's, because as we know, especially if you're dealing with non-professional musicians or non-professional singers, sometimes the text can be a bit of a challenge. So maybe corpus na, which is not what we really want. But if you really want to do the music justice, I think also no breath. No breath. You breathe once at the beginning, and then you breathe once at the end. But okay, so we have corpus na, so no break there. Natum de Maria Virgine. And now here we're going to take a lift because first of all there's a comma. That's awesome. The strings keep going, of course. So if you're conducting the strings, you definitely want to make sure that at least one of your arms is going to tell the strings that, hey, you got to keep playing. You're not stopping. So the strings keep going. Continuo keeps going. But the voices do take a moment. And the question is, like, how much of a moment do they need? Do they need an eighth lift? Do they need a quarter note? So De Maria Virgi, 1, 2, 3. I think in this case, because it's alla breve, you take a little quarter note rest. Take a little bit of a lift. I don't think that you need to slow down because there is no marking for ritardando. So you just keep going and just give your singers a chance to take a moment. Okay. Vere basum immolatum in cru. This is another really important thing. There's no time for the singers to breathe here, and no time. And again, connection. No connection there because they don't play a note. But yeah, so this is definitely a connected phrase. And again, I've seen some conductors cut this off early so that the sopranos can kind of go through. But I really believe it's super important to keep these singers going because the phrase isn't over, right? This is that connected thing. There's a connection here. This is like a elided situation. We've been deceived, right? So musically, right, if we go back to our chart, we've already determined that there's a link happening. So it's really important that we do the music justice, and that's what we're doing here. So we're not going to breathe. We're going to really go for it. And then you want to make sure you cue your cue your parts here, because whenever you have a break, you want to make sure you cue them. And then this keeps going through the bar. Cue the violins. Cue the continuo part. So yeah, really, really cool. I guess there is a little bit of motivic stuff. We have this fifth here that kind of recurs, this fourth here. So we do have ascending jumps. So I'll go back to this thing. Ascending leaps are important. I'll make like a mental note of that. So anytime we see a jump like that, we want to bring it out, because that kind of is a callback to the opening phrase, dum, bum, bum, and also it's a callback to that starred motive that we had before. So yeah, really cool. So that's kind of like the one recurring motive that I'm noticing, besides all the stepwise stuff. All right, moving on to the B section. So we have a little string interlude here. Make sure our singers have a good K. Cuius latus perforatum. And this definitely, don't put an early S there. Please, please, please don't put an early S there, because we've already discovered through our music, through our structural analysis, that there is a connection. It's not two bar phrases. So, latus per, right? No early S there. Perforatum. And now you have a choice to make, right? I think what we discovered here was that there's no period or anything, so there wasn't any A bar connection. There was just 4 bar, 4 bar. So I think we are clear to take an early M here. So that's what the structural analysis really helps us do. So an early quarter note M is what we're gonna do right here. And that's an informed decision. Ra, tum, mu, and then un. And that helps us actually put the glottal stop on u. So glottal on un. Make sure they do that. Da fluxit et sanguine. And you definitely want to make sure that they take that break, because that helps the strings come out. But nothing to do there. Now we have this canonic thing, really important that you make sure that's happening. I marked this early. Oops. Really want to make sure that you bring that out, that conversation. So esto nobis pregustantur in mortis. There's no breathing, no breaks, no early S's, no nothing, right? It's just all super smooth. Zamine, and then you do want to make sure that they take a breath. And what's really nice here is that you definitely want your sopranos here to take a quarter note, and we are covered here because this G happens on the second quarter note here. Second quarter note, second quarter note. So they're covered. So the sound of the G in that same range is all set. So this is a safe early rest or early break. But you definitely want these guys to keep going. Okay? And then they're in. Again, that perfect fifth. Cool thing. You cue these guys. You cue these guys. One bar early. Sorry, let me make a better. Cool. I should be using the ruler, but so that's all cool, and then there's nothing until the end. They go all the way through. Really important that they go all the way through so that the strings can have their connection. So there you go. There's probably way more to do here, but I thought that you could just analyze it together. That is certainly what I would do. I think I'm ready to conduct this piece. And we have our little formal analysis. So I hope this was interesting for you. If this was useful. If you agree, disagree with my analysis, please let me know in the comments if this was helpful. But again, do like the video if you enjoyed it, and do subscribe to the channel. I've got more of these kinds of analyses coming, and other content. So I hope this was fun. It's certainly fun for me. I love doing this kind of thing. So I hope you learned something, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.